The most important three words in our Constitution are the first three words, we the people. Now, our founders, when they were crafting our Constitution, put those words in oversized print so that hundreds of years later, members of Congress, of the House, of the Senate, citizens across this nation could remember that this is what our Constitution is all about, we the people. It's not we the powerful. It's not we the privileged. It's we the people. And it's President Jefferson who said that we can only claim to be a republic to the degree that the decisions of our government reflect the will of the people. And he went on to say that the only way that our government will make decisions that reflect the will of the people is if the people have an equal voice. And by that he meant the example of the town square, where each individual can stand up and make their position known before a vote is held on who you're going to elect, and so on and so forth. But today we have a challenge. And the challenge is that the town commons is now television and radio and the web. And unfortunately, those are not free the way the town center was, the town square was in Jefferson's age. And that means that the role of money can change everything. Unfortunately, we've had a couple of Supreme Court decisions that do accord to the very heart of our Constitution, because they have said essentially, even though the commons is for sale, we are going to allow the few people with billions of dollars, corporations with billions of dollars, to buy up the town square and use the equivalent of a megaphone sound system to drown out the voice of the people. That's the opposite of what we the people is all about. That's the opposite of what our Constitution was all about. And so periodically I'm going to be coming to this floor and talking about a variety of issues that really are relevant to the Jefferson vision, that we can only be a republic to the degree that our decisions reflect the will of the people. Because the issue I'm going to talk to today, and is an issue that Democrats and Republicans and independents overwhelmingly support, and that is that on their food, they get accurate information about whether or not that food has been genetically modified. This is an issue I'm raising today because in a few months, July 1st, Vermont has a law that is going to require the labeling on packages of genetically modified ingredients. And that has led to a conversation here in this chamber about whether we at the federal level should allow that to happen. Should we allow Vermont to make this requirement? Because there's a lot of food producers that say, we really don't want the people to know about the details of their food. Well, I think that Americans across this country disagree. As I mentioned, the overwhelming majority support the right to know. Now, the argument is made, but we can't allow state after state or county after county to have conflicting standards about what we put onto foods. That would be impossible for interstate commerce. And that is a fair point. How can a food manufacturer accommodate multitudinous different requirements for labeling that vary by county and county to this county or city to that city or state to that state? And so that's a fair case if there was risk of there being multiple standards. At this moment, there isn't. Only one state has passed a standard that's going into effect. But just as we've seen with other policies across this nation, something that one state tries, another might say, yes, let's do that, but do a slightly different version. So there is a legitimate concern about conflicting standards. Again, not an immediate concern, not something that would cause this chamber to act today. But if, indeed, other jurisdictions say they would like to have the same type of information available to their citizens who also overwhelmingly want that information, then you have the potential. And that is a legitimate cause for us to discuss here. But here is the thing. If you're going to take away the ability of cities and counties and states to respond to the citizens' desire to know about about whether there are GMO, genetically modified ingredients in their food. If you're going to take that away, then you have to replace it with a national standard that answers that question. If you fail to do so, you're simply denying the right to know to citizens across that country, then that is really just wrong. There's a name for the bill for denying Americans the right to know, and it's called the DARK Act, the acronym, Deny Americans the Right to Know. And it's appropriate that it be called the DARK Act because it's all about keeping consumers in the dark on something they would like to know. Now, there are many people here who say, well, we know better than the consumers. They want to know, but we don't want them to know because, and there's no really any reason they should know because why would they have any concern if they knew all the facts? Is that really our decision to make? I mean, we've decided to label food and let people know whether there's salt in that food. Some people want it, some people don't. We've decided to put calories on the package. Some people want more calories, some want less calories, but they have the right to know. Some people want preservatives because it'll taste better, and some don't, and so on and so forth. It's simply consumer right to know and make choices accordingly. Now, this conversation is not about whether GMO food is safe to eat. Person after person has come to this floor and said, it's safe to eat, there's no proven impact on citizens, and so therefore it's legitimate to strip citizens of the right to know. Well, there's lots of ingredients that we put onto packages that have no known carcinogenic effect, but citizens want the full list, and that's what we provide to them. And some want to know individual pieces of that story. But let's turn back to this question, really, about the fact that GMOs themselves, genetically modified plants, are not substantially in one camp or another, wonderful or terrible. There's a whole mixture, because there's all kinds of genetic modifications that have taken place. For example, this chart shows golden rice. Golden rice has been modified to have vitamin A, and in parts of the world where there's a vitamin A deficiency, this has been very beneficial. Or let's turn to carrot cells. Carrots, some carrot cells have been modified to produce treatments for a genetic disorder called Gaucher's disease, a metabolic disorder where people lack a specific enzyme which helps rid the body of fatty substances, and those accumulations of those substances cause enlarged livers and spleens and bone damage and bruising and anemia. So people are very much happy that we have a way to address that. Or sweet potatoes. Researchers have been developing sweet potatoes that withstand multiple viral infections commonly encountered in southern Africa. And that enables sweet potatoes to be grown and be part of the subsistence, or the, not subsistence isn't quite the word, but of a substantial source of food in that region. But there's also genetic modifications that cause concerns. Most of the genetically modified crops grown in the U.S. have been altered to confer resistance to a chemical herbicide known as glyphosate. Now, glyphosate, it's an herbicide, it's a weed killer. And essentially, as the application of glyphosate has gone up dramatically from 1994 through the current time, and you can see this huge increase in the application of this weed killer, well, we've had a corresponding general depletion of the monarch butterfly in those regions where glyphosate is used. Well, that's a concern. The monarchs have been crashing, and that's a concern to folks. Or look at and think about the runoff. If you put billions of gallons of weed killer on crops, there's billions of gallons running into the waterways, it has an impact on the waterways. It changes the makeup of the waterways because of the weed killer killing various organisms within the streams. Herbicides in our waterway can have a negative impact on fish and mussels and amphibians and microorganisms. There is also a challenge in which plants evolve, and they evolve in response to the application of glyphosate. So you can end up with what are called super weeds, weeds that have been in the presence of these herbicides so often, the natural mutations that are occurring cause the weeds to evolve to become super weeds. We have had the same problem with these little bugs here, corn-destroying rootworms. They have been evolving to be resistant to the pesticide that is placed into the plant cell by genetic modification. So, in short, there's competing considerations to balance, some benefits and some concerns. And some people reach the conclusion that they are very comfortable consuming genetically modified foods, and other individuals can reach a different, equally justifiable conclusion that they have concerns and want to know more about the specific types of modifications. And the way they find out is because they get an alert on the package that there are GMO ingredients, and then they can look up the details on the website of the company involved. That's why labeling matters. It's an alert to the citizen so they can gain more information and decide if they are comfortable or uncomfortable. Well, what we have seen are companies that are starting to say, because we value the relationship with our customers, because our company believes in having high integrity in that relationship, we do not want to be part of the dark movement, the Deny Americans Right to Know movement. We want to be part of the movement that says if our consumers want to know, we're going to give them that information. Now, there are a variety of companies that have announced that they're going to provide that information on their foods. One of them is the Mars company. Here I have a package of M&Ms, and right on the package, they are now disclosing. They have a phrase on here, and I know it'd be impossible to read this, so we've enlarged this a bit, partially produced with genetic engineering. So they give a heads up on every package of M&Ms across the country. They're giving a heads up to consumers, and if they want to know more about the details, they can contact Mars to find out about the details. That's integrity. That's honoring citizens who have a desire to know what's in their food. Campbell's soups. We've all grown up seeing the wonderful pictures of Campbell's soups in advertisements and the warm, hearty meal, the tomato soup. I know that when I was sick as a child, I always looked forward to that Campbell's tomato soup. And they have said, we want to honor the integrity of the relationship with our consumer. We are not going to be part of the Deny Americans Right to Know movement. We're not going to be on the side of the dark. We are going to be on the side of information that our citizens desire to have. And so they are putting labels on their products. And a number of companies are following suit in honor of protecting the consumer's right to know. That is certainly commendable, and I commend the companies who do not feel like they're trying to mislead or hide from their consumers, but in fact support the integrity of the relationship with those who buy their products. Some of the companies that have done this are ConAgra, General Mills, Kellogg, I mentioned Mars. They've already begun to label their products in anticipation of Vermont's July 1st requirement. Now Vermont has a 6-month grace period. So again, it's not just around the corner, but the beginning period that companies have been asked to meet is July 1st. And because companies are now putting it on their packages, they're discovering there's nothing scary to consumers about it. Just like anything else on the ingredients package is information that different consumers can evaluate when it matters to their life. Now, there is a group of senators who have said they do want to be part of the DARK Act, Deny Americans Right to Know. And so they said, we'll have a voluntary labeling plan nationally. We will take away states' rights to put information on the package and replace it with a voluntary request for companies to disclose. That is no justification for taking away the ability of states to require what consumers want, which is not a voluntary disclosure, it'd be a required disclosure. And if a state wants to do that, they should be honored. And if we're going to take away that right, we need to do a replacement at the national level. Well, now, part of this movement, this Deny American the Right to Know movement, this DARK Act, they said, well, you know what? We're willing to suggest that companies put a barcode on their product, and consumers can scan that code, or they can put a quick response computer code. It's a square code with all the little squares on it, something like what you have on an airline ticket. We can put this quick response code on, and if somebody wants to know what's in our product, they can scan it with their smartphone and look it up on our website. That is not a consumer-friendly label. That is a scam. Consumers don't all have a smartphone. Consumers don't all have a digital plan that allows them to scan something in that fashion. They don't all have a camera with a phone with a camera on it. And we're asking them to have to spend money out of their phone plan in order to look up information that should have just been on the package in the first place. That's a tax. That's the DARK Act tax on American consumers. And some of my colleagues who talk about not putting taxes on individuals voted for that DARK tax just a few weeks ago. And I hope they reconsider that type of imposition on the moms and dads and brothers and sisters across America. No one going down the aisle to shop is going to sit there and compare 4 different soups by taking pictures of 4 different soups, going to 4 different websites to look up that information. And plus, they're disclosing information about themselves when they go to those websites. That's invasion of privacy on top of the DARK tax that my colleagues want to impose on American consumers. And it is wrong, as we see, wrong on multiple levels. Now, some of my colleagues said, let's put an 800 number on, with no explanation of why it's there. Well, you can take most products in America, and you can probably find an 800 number somewhere on that package, some corporate information line. But you put an 800 number on with no explanation of why it's there. That's not consumer information. That'd be like taking the whole ingredients list on a package and replacing it with an 800 number. Call this to find out, and we'll read you a list of the ingredients over the phone. It's absurd. It's ridiculous, and it's offensive to try to pretend that that type of scam is a replacement for consumer-friendly information right on the package. You want to know how to operate, whether or not you're being true to the desire of consumers to have a consumer-friendly label? Well, I'll tell you. It's called the 1-second test. You have a product. It's on the shelf. You pick it up, turn it over, you look, 1 second, I see the answer. There is or there is not genetically modified ingredients in this package. That's the 1-second test. That is a fair replacement for state standards. Now, it can be done in a variety of ways. You can put a symbol on. I've suggested that the FDA or the USDA could choose a symbol. Brazil chooses to have a T for transgenic and triangle. We could do that. We could put on a B for biotechnology. We could put in a G or a GM for genetically modified. There's all sorts of options here that would be a simple way for consumers to see what's there. Or we could put in a phrase like Mars has done on their candy. Or we could put an asterisk on the ingredients that have been modified with a phrase below to explain the asterisk. All those are possible. But an unlabeled phone number, an unlabeled barcode or quick response code, because it's a deliberate effort to pretend you're solving something when you're not, that is a shameful scam, and it should never pass scrutiny here on the floor of the Senate. Now, I said earlier that citizens across this country want a consumer-friendly label. We can look to a survey that was done. This was a 2016 likely election voters. The survey was done in November 2015. 89% of Americans said they would like to have the information on the label. They said they favor mandatory labels on foods that have been genetically engineered or contain genetically engineered ingredients. So basically 9 out of 10. And a 77% supermajority not only favored mandatory labeling, but strongly favored such labeling. So let me put it more simply. 9 out of 10 Americans want the information on the label, and if you round off, 8 out of 10 feel very strongly about this. Now here's something that's interesting. We are often divided by party here. The Republicans are sitting on the right side, the Democrats on the left side. There's a lot of partisan division. Maybe independents have a view in the middle. But on this issue, Democrats believe 9 out of 10, rounding off, 9 out of 10 that we should have these labels. Republicans believe 9 out of 10 that we should have these labels. So wouldn't it be ironic if the one thing Americans can agree on, whether they're East Coast or West Coast or North or South or Democrat or Republican or Independent, the one thing they all agree on, this body decides to do the opposite and take away that ability. That would certainly counter the fundamental principle that Jefferson put forward of a we the people democracy, that we can only claim to be a republic to the degree that what we do reflects the will of the people. So we should think about that a lot, because there's a lot of conversation about folks who want to spring a surprise on the American people. They want to come down here to the floor on some bill in the near future with some amendment or some motion or some reconsideration, spring a surprise, and drive the dark act through with little public notice. And why is that? Because they are afraid of the opinions of the American people. They want to hide their decision in a short period of time with no ability for the American people to be filled in on the fact that they are attempting to pass legislation that overturns what 90% or 9 out of 10 Americans want. So we need to be aware of this, and I encourage my colleagues, do not be part of this Deny Americans Right to Know movement. This movement that is opposed by 9 out of 10 Americans in the Democratic camp, in the Republican camp, in the Independent camp, in every geography of America. Don't be part of going so profoundly, so fundamentally, so overwhelmingly against the will of the American people. We put a lot of things onto packages because the American people ask for that information. If you buy in a grocery store of any size, they're required to put that whether or not fish is farm-raised or wild. Why do we require that? It's not because being farm-fished is going to kill people. It's because citizens have a desire to know and to vote with their dollar, their food dollar. Vote with their food dollar for something they believe to be important. It may have to do with the taste of the product. It may have to do with the difference in antibiotics that are used in farm versus wild. It may have to do with their desire to envision that food when it was swimming in the broad, beautiful Pacific Ocean, the incredible salmon of the Pacific Ocean and the salmon of the Atlantic Ocean. But the point is, it's their right to know. It's nothing much is as important to us as what we put into our bodies. People fundamentally feel they should be able to have full information. We indeed provide the information on whether juice is reconstituted from concentrate or it's fresh, not because it will cause you to get sick, not because it's unhealthy to consume, but because consumers desire to know and they want to exercise their food dollars appropriately. Some people just say, I really would like to have the stuff the way it was squeezed out of the fruit rather than frozen and condensed and reconstituted. And so we provide that information because of that citizen desire. Shouldn't we honor our citizens in this issue as well? And isn't it wrong for a group of senators to plot to come to this floor, to put forward an amendment, or put forward a reconsideration, or put forward a bill on short notice so that the American people have little chance to weigh in? Personally, I think it's very wrong, and that's why I'm speaking today. Now, it isn't as if this question of putting labels on food is something new or different. It is being done all around the world. 64 other countries, including 28 members of the European Union, and Japan, and Australia, they already require mandatory GMO labeling. And we can add to that list Brazil. And we can add to that list China. China, which has no democratic form in which to respond to the will of the people. The decisions are top-down. And yet the leadership of China has said that our consumers care enough about this that we're going to disclose that information. Isn't it profoundly ironic that here in the United States of America, where citizens have a voice, a group of senators are trying to suppress that voice, are trying to implement and deny Americans the right to know, when China, leaders of China, have decided that this is information that consumers deserve. Let me return to where I started, the vision of a we the people democracy. We've gone far afield from that. The role of money in politics has put us in a very different position because that money weighs in. It corrupts the fundamental nature of our legislative process. That's why we're having this debate over denying Americans the right to know when 9 out of 10 want that information, because of the corrupting power of massive concentrations of campaign cash in our system. So let's do something that we should do all the time. Set aside the campaign, set aside the desire to raise money, set aside those issues, and ask yourself, aren't we here to help pursue the will of the people? And in this case, in our We the People democracy, shouldn't we give our citizens the same right to know, a right they overwhelmingly expect and demand, as 64 other countries in the world?